Before this video really gets going, I want to start by prefacing that the recording of this video was essentially done when the news broke that PlayStation would no longer be making physical versions of their games past January of 2028. I was literally recording the final paragraphs of the script when the news broke, and I didn't want to scrap the whole video since I was finally wrapping up the hardest part of the video making process, which for me is the recording. Towards the end of the video, I do bring it up. However, I don't go into too much detail about it because for all intents and purposes, it's still breaking news. This video focuses on PlayStation's live service games, or lack thereof, studio closures, and the ever-increasing price of their almost 6-year-old console. I just thought I'd open up with this so that way you're not halfway through the video asking, why is he not bringing up the physical media issue? Anyway, let's get the ball rolling here. Hello everyone, my name is Brent, and I'm a PlayStation fan, or what some folks who are terminally online would call a Sony pony. My PlayStation journey started when I was about 12 years old. My sister's boyfriend at the time gave me a PS1 along with loads of games. Games such as the original Resident Evil trilogy, Grand Theft Auto 2, and several other games that I don't really recall. I would play these games over and over again because it was all that I had. A few years later, I got a PlayStation 2 and I would play games such as Kingdom Hearts 2, which I still have my original copy of, The Sufferings 1 and 2, Psi-Ops: The Mindgate Conspiracy, and my all-time favorite, Resident Evil 4. I would play these games all the time. I did switch to the Xbox 360 for a while, but I would eventually get a PlayStation 3 at an extremely low cost too, I might add. How might you ask? Well, remember that crazy month-long PlayStation Network outage back in 2011? After that was resolved, I received a $200 off coupon from GameStop for a new PlayStation 3. I honestly couldn't believe it at the time, so much to the point that I went into GameStop and I asked if it was legit, which they confirmed. So I bought a PlayStation 3 and I played the Uncharted games, the Infamous games, The Last of Us, and many others. It was when I got my day one PS4 though when I really started to enjoy my time with PlayStation. I was now an adult with adult money and I could buy the games that I wanted when I wanted. The first Destiny game was something that I couldn't stop playing. I had a regular group of friends that I would play with, and every reset day like clockwork we'd be running Vault of Glass and Crota's End. That was some of the most fun gaming I've had in my life. It was all done on PlayStation and was even the inspiration for this YouTube channel. My love of single-player games would be reignited with the releases of God of War and Spider-Man 2018. From there, I fell in love with other single-player games such as Persona 5, Final Fantasy VII Remake, playing the remakes of Resident Evil 2 and 3, two games that I fell in love with on the PlayStation 1. The Last of Us Part 2 was a big game that I enjoyed playing, along with Kingdom Hearts 3, a game that I had been looking forward to for over a decade. So, as you can see, I've been quite satisfied with PlayStation and the games that are provided on their console, whether it be first-party games or third-party games, for a long time now. And I only mentioned a handful of what I've played over the years. I prefer my single-player walking simulator movie games to any multiplayer game any day. I also really like the console and how the interface works, along with the DualSense controller. However, lately I can't help but be frustrated with how things have been going over at PlayStation, whether it be them shutting down most of the studios that they've acquired over the past 10 years, the release cadence of their games, and most importantly, their weird desire to create multiple live service games. As a PlayStation fan, I feel like I need to voice my frustrations. As the PS4 generation was winding down and the PS5 generation was kicking off, was when I started noticing some of the things that have concerned me. Throughout the course of the PlayStation 4 years, especially in the latter half of its life cycle, PlayStation regularly developed and/or published multiple games a year. Please note that before you have a well actually moment, I'm fully aware that some of the games that I'm about to list have since been released onto other platforms. However, at the time of the release, the games I'm about to mention were exclusive to PlayStation. In 2016, you had the Ratchet & Clank remake, Uncharted 4, and The Last Guardian. 2017 would see the release of newcomer Horizon Zero Dawn and the Uncharted spin-off Uncharted Lost Legacy. 2018 was a big year for PlayStation with the releases of the soft reboot of God of War and Insomniac's Marvel's Spider-Man. Also, I'm fully aware that at this point in time, Insomniac was not a PlayStation-owned studio, but PlayStation owned the publishing rights to Ratchet & Clank, along with gaining the rights to make a Spider-Man game, which they approached Insomniac to do. 2019 had Days Gone and Death Stranding. 2020 had The Last of Us Part 2, the worldwide release of Persona 5 Royal, Ghost of Tsushima, Final Fantasy VII Remake, and Spider-Man Miles Morales, which would be a PlayStation 5 launch title. Reading that sentence out loud just now made me realize that 2020 was a massive year for games that would be exclusive to the console at the time. I don't think they've had a year this good since then. What a way to close out the generation. The first few years for the PS5 weren't terrible. Even though things started to slip with releases at this time, The releases during PS5's launch window were really strong, with games such as Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, Deathloop, Ghostwire Tokyo, Returnal, Horizon Forbidden West, and God of War Ragnarok. However, after Ragnarok and around the release of Marvel Spider-Man 2, it was when PlayStation really started to stumble with getting games released. In 2024, PlayStation had some strong exclusives come to their platform, such as Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Stellar Blade, and the wildly successful Astrobot, along with Sony's first successful live service game, Helldivers 2. But those high-profile releases were overshadowed by the disastrous release of Concord. On top of that, in the months leading up to and after Concord's release, it felt like PlayStation's first-party exclusive lineup was starting to dry up. Outside of Naughty Dog's Intergalactic, Insomniac's Wolverine, Housemarque's Soros, there wasn't much being talked about from the other PlayStation studios. Nothing new from Guerrilla, and Bend has been pretty much silent ever since it was announced that they wouldn't be working on a sequel to Days Gone. Furthermore, it feels like PlayStation studios have turned into franchise studios. Insomniac is now the Marvel studio, Santa Monica has been the God of War studio for 20 years, Guerrilla has been the Horizon studio for some time now, and although Naughty Dog is working on a new IP with Intergalactic, they were the Uncharted and The Last of Us and the unwanted remasters of games that are not so old game studio. I'm looking at you, The Last of Us Parts 1 and 2. Look, I love The Last of Us, and even I recognize that remaking and remastering those games was completely unnecessary. With that being said, outside of Naughty Dog's Intergalactic and Housemarque's Returnal and Soros, it feels like PlayStation first-party studios aren't taking any interesting creative risks and not exploring new ideas and stories. At the very least, they could be reigniting IPs that have been dormant for some time, such as Resistance, Jak and Daxter, Infamous, and Killzone. At least we did get Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart a few years back, but I believe this lack of creativity is linked to PlayStation's desire to produce as many successful live service games that they can. Prior to his retirement, Jim Ryan got it into his head that developing a ton of live service games was a bright idea. I'm all for trying new things, but in the late 2010s and early 2020s, there was already a plethora of successful live service games on the market. At the time, Destiny 2 seemed to be doing alright, Overwatch was a Game of the Year winner, and both Halo Infinite and Diablo 4 were on the verge of launching. I can understand PlayStation wanting a piece of the live service pie. A good live service game can generate constant revenue, but the game has to be good enough to pull lots of gamers away from already established good live service games in order to even get off the ground. Because of this, I and many other PlayStation fans knew that it was a bad idea from the start. The one live service game that many PlayStation gamers wanted was canceled, The Last of Us Factions. Neil Druckmann put out a statement that in order to support something like a live service The Last of Us game, they'd have to dedicate their team to constantly maintaining it, which would mean that it would prevent them from working on their single-player games. Even though Helldivers 2 was a breakout hit, especially for the PC market, it wasn't without its own controversy. Although it was initially planned to have a mandatory PSN account link through Steam from the start, the folks at PlayStation and Arrowhead agreed to remove this requirement at launch to allow everyone the ability to play it due to a bug in the linking process, with the intention of putting the account link requirement back into place at a later date. However, this was poorly communicated. When this requirement was re-implemented, it cut a majority of PC players out of the game, and players from several countries around the world were prevented from accessing the game due to PSN being limited or unavailable entirely in those countries. For weeks, Helldivers 2 was review bombed over on Steam due to this decision. Although Sony and Arrowhead reversed the decision entirely, the damage had already been done and many gamers refused to play the game any further. Despite this, Helldivers 2 seems to be maintaining itself even though it's no longer making waves in the gaming community, and it's not much talked about anymore in the gaming media. The folks at Arrowhead were good sports about the whole thing though, and released a free cape that looked like how the Steam review boards looked during the review bombing. And we can't really talk about this PlayStation live service push without talking about Concord. A month or so after PlayStation acquired Firewalk Studios, they announced Concord during PlayStation's May 2023 showcase, which showed little more than a title card. A year later, during another PlayStation showcase, the first full cinematic trailer was released that showed off the characters with zero gameplay. I remember watching that trailer and thinking to myself, nobody is going to play this game and it's going to get shut down within a few months. And boy was I wrong about the few months part. Concord released on August 23, 2024 and received a Metacritic score of 62 on PS5 and 65 on PC with an OpenCritic score of 22. Some review outlets said that at its core it was a good hero shooter but lacked anything that could make it stand out. PC Gamer called it sluggish, boring, and devoid of any interesting tactics beyond balling up as a team and standing on an objective. and under their Need to Know section, they called it an underbaked, overpriced, and dated hero shooter. Less than 2 weeks after Concord failed to gain any sort of traction anywhere, with reports of less than 1,000 consecutive Steam players, Sony announced that they would be taking Concord offline and refunding the game to anyone who bought it. In October of 2024, Concord was shut down, and as a result, Firewalk Studios was shuttered. Concord's failure and swift shutdown of both the game and its developing studio is considered the worst gaming failure in recent history. This live service push had drastic moves and outcomes as well. In 2022, Sony acquired Bungie, claiming that they wanted to use the studio to assist in Jim Ryan's live service push. Jim Ryan believed that live service games would be more profitable than subscription services. Other studios that Sony bought and or worked with to get this live service push off the ground were Bluepoint, which would be used to help with making remasters, and Haven was acquired in 2022. Haven has been working on a game called Fair Games for some time now, however there hasn't been any update in a while. Neon Koi was acquired in 2022, and in 2023 the most famous or infamous of the purchases was Firewalk Studios, which as we all know was working on Concord. All of these studios, with the exception of Haven, were acquired during the 2020s and would be subsequently shuttered in the years to come. Other studio closures in the 2020s included Manchester Studio, Pixel Opus, and London Studio. And now, as of the middle of 2026, Bungie is facing significant layoffs. These studio closures and layoffs, in my opinion, are a result of the failed live service push. Instead of spending loads of money on live service games and remakes and remasters like The Last of Us games, PlayStation could have allowed these studios to be working on games that they wanted to make, especially Bluepoint. I understand that there are conflicting reports on the status of Bloodborne. It was reported that Bluepoint wanted to work on a Bloodborne remake, but the pitch was turned down by both PlayStation and FromSoft. Hell, PlayStation could have at least let them work on remakes of old games like the Ratchet & Clank sequels and Jak and Daxter, or something that's older than 10 years old. On top of all of these things, PlayStation also internally canceled several other unannounced live service games such as a supposed Spider-Man game and God of War game, along with many others. As it stands, Helldivers 2 and Marathon seem to be PlayStation's only reasonable launches in regards to their live service push, and although Marathon seems to be doing alright, it's still too early to tell what the future holds for that game. All in all, Jim Ryan's desire to have a variety of live service games has been a colossal waste of time, money, and developer resources. Looking at all of this, any reasonable person should conclude that this live service push is little more than a failure, and PlayStation has ultimately wasted an entire generation and most of PlayStation fans' time. All this could have been avoided if PlayStation paid attention to what their player base wanted. I, along with many other fans online, have been vocal about how we don't want live service games. We love our Spider-Mans, we love our Last of Us's, we want Days Gone 2, we want more Horizon, more God of War. We also want to see the revival of classic IPs and new IPs as well. Well, at the very least, I want those things. If PlayStation really wanted these live service games to work, then here's what I think they should have done. 1. The Last of Us factions shouldn't have been cancelled. PlayStation and Naughty Dog should have given the game its own team to develop and maintain it, which would allow Naughty Dog to continue to work on their single-player games. 2. Make live service games using existing franchises that PlayStation fans are familiar with, such as Resistance and Killzone. Hell, even the Days Gone IP probably could have worked as a live service game. Lastly, and this might be controversial to some, make these games free to play and monetize them through microtransactions such as skins, new characters, expansions, and seasonal battle passes. Eliminating the initial financial entry barrier would allow more people to try the game to see if it was something that they wanted to invest their time in. And if it is, then they'd probably be willing to spend money on the aforementioned microtransactions. Let's talk about pricing now. Sony has raised the prices of their PS5 consoles exponentially since launching in 2020, with the base PS5 now costing $650 while initially only costing $500, and the PS5 Pro now costing $900 when it launched at $700 back in 2024. I know that there are extenuating circumstances regarding RAM shortages and whatnot, but hardware should get cheaper as the internal components within said hardware start to become dated. Also, as of the final preparations of this script, they've raised the prices of PlayStation Plus for new subscribers, and it was also announced that Bungie would be winding down support for Destiny 2 and putting their focus on Marathon and pitching new game ideas, while also letting go a fair amount of their staff. And they just announced that they would be ceasing production on physical media in January of 2028. This news hits hard, and it came out right before I wrapped up the recording of this video, so it's hard for me to elaborate on it due to having to shoehorn in these comments last minute. So I'll try to say what I can. With a few exceptions such as Hogwarts Legacy, Star Wars Jedi Survivor, and 007 First Light, games that are confirmed to have required day one patches despite having quote-unquote physical versions. My entire library is physical. I like having tangible items that I can hold in my hand. It's proof that I own it. PlayStation was the last bastion of physical media and having a full game on the disc. Switch 2 cartridges don't have the full game, and Xbox discs require internet to download the full game. So this is a devastating blow for Sony. As more information comes to light, I'll try to make a larger video regarding it. It's been a while since I've released scripted videos on this channel. It's been an interesting couple of years for me, and the last thing I wanted to do with one of my first few scripted videos back in over a year is have it be about a negative topic. My breakout video on this channel was a negative one, and I really don't want my channel to be all about negativity. So I feel like I should emphasize that I've had a lot of fun focusing on gaming for the past 18 months or so. I've been putting my PS5 to work, and I will continue to be a fan and continue to buy their systems because that's where my games are. Although PlayStation still wants to make some live service games, it does seem that they are dialing back and going back to what they do best. I gravitated toward PlayStation during the PS4 era because during that time, PlayStation built a reputation for itself by making great single-player games. These are the games that I like now. However, I'm not letting them off the hook. I'm going to speak with my wallet and only support the games that I actually want to play. And I'm excited for the next 18 to 24 months because there's some great games on their way to the console that are both first and third-party exclusives and games that will be available everywhere as well. That said, I'm writing and putting this video together during the summer of 2026, and a few months ago I was lying in bed thinking, damn, PlayStation is really fucking up as of late. I should say something about it. As an over 2-decade-long PlayStation fan, I felt the need to say something about how they've been handling things since the launch of the PlayStation 5. Anyway, my goal with this video and the Resident Evil 2 video that I did not long ago is to get back in the swing of making more scripted videos. So if you're interested in seeing more videos like this one, please consider dropping a like and even better, a sub. It really helps me out a lot. In the meantime, I'll catch you all on the next one. Take care.